Good morning, everyone. This is Patrick at Qdabra Software. Hope you're all doing well. Today we have another topic for you, and actually it's the same topic as last week. We're so thrilled about this new technique that we're doing it 2 weeks in a row. Actually, it's because we screwed up the recording last week, so we're retaping it. But we have new people here, so I want to welcome all of you to our webinar today, and I'm glad you could make it. I have with me James Risch, who is our Steam developer from Kyoto. He's been with us for 14 years now. Thank you, Jimmy. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, I can hear you fine.
Wonderful. We're talking about multiple languages today, and it's because not everyone speaks English. Not everyone can read English. And so you want to give your non-native English speakers basically a form that looks that they can read, right? So how do you do that? Well, you could actually create two forms. You could create a form in their language. You could create a form in your language, but that's a lot of work. Whenever something changes, you have to update both forms. You could create a form that has hard-coded strings in it, right? That you basically have a language file, and you look up the language strings and you switch it. But the language is limited, it's hard-coded. What about times when you have people that you don't know what language they speak, but you just want to give them the option of viewing their form, displaying it in their native tongue or in a language that they're more familiar with or that they want to read as opposed to English? So that's today's technique. We're actually using Google Translate to allow you to translate any form without creating two forms, without creating two views. Any form can be translated into all of the languages that Google provides, and there are hundreds. Now, not saying that Google Translate works perfectly for all those languages, but you've got a lot more flexibility and functionality there because you don't have to hard code things. You can just call Google's API. Google does a very good job of translating, and that's the topic for today. So obviously, you have users, customers who may not understand English as well as you do, and therefore we want to give them an option to at least display the form in a different language. And we're talking about the language, the labels in the form, and also the values. So that the labels will be English by default, and then when we switch it, it'll switch to their language. The value text, when they type in some response, they can type it in their own language, and you can actually even translate that back to English, so that your searches and your reporting are consistent. And that's really cool. And so we're going to show you those techniques today. And I'd like to just quickly turn the baton over, hand it over to Jimmy so he can show you this. Jimmy?
Thank you very much for that introduction, Patrick. Okay, so just to sort of demo the form in action, we have our trusty expense report form here. And what we've got here is a drop down at the top. And when I pick a different language here, you'll see that all of the labels change to the language that I've selected. So I can go to Hindi or even Chinese. And we've also got it set up such that the drop-down values here are also translated when I pick a different language. So I pick Afrikaans. There we go. Was there something else
there's
you want?
English screen tips, my goodness. Okay, so this is a really cool technique that Jimmy's just showing here. He's hovering over whatever that is, business purpose in Afrikaans, and it's actually reverting back to the English. So this is a nice tip, a nice little tool tip here that we can give people just in case they want to review what the English was, kind of help them learn English. The other thing, Jimmy, let's do is let's go Japanese or some language that I know you speak many languages and read more. But let's actually go in here and create an expense report, and let's type in Japanese and show them this translation functionality. Okay. So let's make in Japanese. I'm going to test your Japanese abilities here, but let's say that the the purpose of this is to attend a conference. Okay, so we're going to attend a conference, and of course, then we're going to have a plane trip. That's typical expense report fashion here. Put in my name or your name and me as your manager, right? We got the plane trip, and we're going to say that's going to be, I don't know, a couple $100, maybe 500. And then we're going to add a hotel. We have not done this example before, so we'll see how this does. This is like on the fly demo here. So we're going to add the hotel. Jimmy is translating in his brain simultaneously. He's even better than Google API. He's listening and translating at the same time.
Okay, I guess I picked a random value here. This is code sushi now.
Yeah, you get the right one, yeah. I think. And
Okay.
let's add one more for let's meals. You got to go out for a restaurant, right, with your mask on, and you have to have that special sip thing that you poke through the mask so you can sip your beverage without taking your mask off, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there we go. Cool, found it. And we'll submit this. And what's going to happen when Jimmy submits this is, make sure you fill the valid entries out here. And everyone's all like glazing over here watching Jimmy type Japanese. But when he submits this, the key thing here is just going to translate those values into English. And it's also going to submit the form to the library. So let's go to that library then when you're done, Jimmy, and let's just see what happens. Look at that.
Here we go.
Look at that. It actually translated into English. He didn't type those values. Airplane generation. That's interesting. Why would it say generation? But the hotel and the meal guide can't translate correctly. So it's not perfect, but you can see that it is translating. If you go back into the form, why don't you see if we have a typo there? To prove them that we actually round trip this.
No, that's right.
Yeah, so it must be
they translated die as the generation.
Yeah. Can you replace it?
Well, I mean, that is the correct word for it.
Mm-hmm, right. Like Kipu or something like that? Yeah, try that one. Different word, see if it translates that any better. That's the crux of it. Now, so it's pretty cool. Now, this is pretty easy to add to your forms, and you're going to buy a whole plane and travel there to the conference. But pretty easy to add the form. Let's go through the form and show them how you add it in Forms Designer, if you don't mind.
Okay. Yep.
Now, one thing.
All right. So
before you get started, I just want to make one little preface here, and that is that these labels they're all blank. So this makes for a very confounding view here on the left, where you see the form, and the only thing that's showing in English is that drop-down select. But there's calculated values for every single label. Jimmy's going to talk about that in a second. And we have a kind of a bonus technique that we're going to talk about. We're not going to recommend it, but we're going to show you how to make these labels show up in English, even in the Designer. But you have to use Input Designer until we have that feature for Forms Designer. So Jimmy's going to talk more about that. But rest assured that we're going to sort of clarify this labels being blank. Jimmy?
Okay, so at the heart of where all the values are coming from, we're using this file called translation source. And it's basically just contains a repeating group of from values and to values. And you can see that here. Basically, we fill this out to list all of the different values we want to use in the form. We give them keys so that we can identify them more easily. And what the logic will do is you can tell it what language you want it to translate these to, and it will do that. So
the designer Forms Designer just has to create an English version of this.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to be English. It could be whatever from language you want it to be, but typically, I imagine it would be English for most
the default
most
language.
people
Got it.
listening here.
Got it.
Yep. And then we've also got this file here that has all the logic. So it's got these different actions down here that you can perform. This is one we use to copy everything from here to here. So the form starts off with all of these values in the two values, so we can show them right away. We've got one for translating a single value, one for translating multiple values, basically everything in this file. And this is sort of the what actually executes the request. But I think I'm getting a bit ahead of myself. So let's, oh, wrong window. Yeah, so let's look at how that's translation source is actually used. So there are two ways you can reference it. We're demonstrating two ways you can use it in this form. So one is just a straightforward, you get a string value where the key is equal to a particular key. So this is our end date field. So we want the to value where key is equal to end date. So it's just gonna display that, whatever's in that field.
And that's the label, right?
Yep.
So the label is flipping based on the language is selected.
Yeah, it's displaying whatever is in the two values, whatever's been translated.
Got it.
Yeah. So we've got this other one here. It's a little more complicated, but essentially accomplishes the same thing. So this part right here is the same up to here. It's getting the start date one. And then we've got a bit here as sort of a fallback value in case that the value is blank. So some of you might be familiar with this approach, but we're basically including a start date in this concatenation if the value here is blank.
So this is sorry, I was going to say that this is a start date, and this is a default to that, whatever you have typed in after substring there, if the translated to value doesn't exist.
Correct. Although in our case that wouldn't actually happen, since there's actually logic that copies the from values to the to values. But you could omit that logic and have it use these fallbacks. And there is one there was one side effect of doing it this way, is that if you look at the form in the info path designer, it actually evaluates these formulas. So when it's evaluating them, it doesn't have any values in those two values there. So this one shows up as blank. But if it evaluates this one, it's going to get that fallback text and show it.
And now we have an interesting quick question for the audience.
Yeah.
That is, why would this be a bad technique? I mean, obviously it shows the text in Path Designer. That's good for you because you're designing the form and you're forgetting where the labels are. I mean, you could right-click them and see what the values were bound to, but why would this calculate value technique not be such a good idea? We give everyone another few seconds here to respond. And yes, you're all right. Actually, they're not all right. So we got several people saying all the above, and several people saying, one person, I think, at least one person saying duplicate label requires updating in two places. Yeah, so that's probably the main reason, but it is really all of the above. So everyone got a correct answer there, and just close out the poll. Thanks for playing along here, everyone. Jimmy, let's actually switch quickly back to the slide for a second, and obviously we want to summarize how easy it is to add these two files that you demoed in Notepad++ to their forms, along with the rules that they would use. Do you want to show them where the rules are first, and then I think we'll switch back to the slides after that?
Yeah, so we've got rules in a couple of places. First, as with most things, there's some setup you want to do when the form loads. So this is not related to the translation. But here, there's a field where you can store the Google API key. Basically, if you want to use the translation APIs, you have to have a Google account and an API key for it. Now, these accounts, you get, several thousands of translations for free per month. So it's possible to use this API without paying anything at all, as long as you stay within the limits, which are pretty huge. And here, so this is logic to handle the case where they're opening an existing form. So if the target language stored in the form has a value, then it's going to run the translation logic when we're loading, just so that all the labels show whatever was selected, and so on. So it's setting the target language that we want to translate to, and then running the translate. If it's a new form and there is no target language specified in the form data, then we're just setting the target language to a default value, which is English. So that's the initialization logic. Now, over here in this thing I showed briefly earlier, this is where all the logic to actually do the stuff takes place. So this one, as always with most of these trigger fields, we just have some boilerplate here to stop them from looping indefinitely. Then we're running a command to delete all the to values and then just copy from the from values to the to ones. And what I've done here is all the qrules commands that it uses are actually stored here in fields, which makes it easier to add this to a new form. Instead of having to enter the command, you just copy the contents of this field into qrules, and it'll run the command that's here. So that's what I'm doing in the form. I'm running the delete to values, which you can see here is just a delete command, and then the copy from values, which is a copy command.
Where are you actually calling Google? Where do you make that request?
Yeah, okay, so that's down here. So both of these, the translate single value logic and the translate multi, they call off to this trigger, which does the actual work. So first, we've got a piece in the data source that is basically the Google request format, but in an XML representation. So here is the request. So we've got a source, which is the source language, target language, format is text. They have different models, and then the queue list is all of the values we want to translate. Is just in a repeating group. Okay, so we basically, as a first step, we're running this convert request, which is an XML to JSON. So we're converting this into JSON because the actual Google API expects JSON. Then the next one, we're using, let's see. So this one actually uses a bit of a formula. It's taking this execute request, which is a make request command, but we need to include the key value there at the end. So it's concatenating in the key value with that boilerplate command. So that runs the command, that runs the API request. And then as a last step, we need to get the response and convert it back into XML so that we can use it. So that is using the JSON to XML command to copy the stuff into here.
So you go from XML to JSON, make your request, and then when you get the results back, you go back from JSON to XML, and then the form can use it because the form loves XML.
Yep.
Gotcha. Cool. Hey, so what about the difference between single and multi? I mean, I've heard about multipass.
Yeah. So multi-values, basically, it will take first. The purpose of the translate multi is to just translate everything it's in here into whatever target language is specified. So the first thing is a populate request. That actually uses an XSLT to populate request. It uses an XSL transform to copy, take these values and copy them into here so that they're in the right format to make the request. Then we perform the request by triggering that other field that I showed just a moment ago. And then fill result is using another XSLT to take the stuff that's in here and then copy it into here, which will be in basically the same format here, but the values will be different. The keys will be the same.
So the multiply is used in the beginning when you select a different language, and the single is used when you're entering values because they just want to do one at a time, right?
Right. Okay. So single. That also uses a XSLT, but it's a very similar process. But we're only translating a single value. So the way we can use that, and we have an example here. Let's find that. So when you want to translate just a single value, let's see. Okay, so we copy the field value into here. This is the place where we put the value we want to translate. We specify the target language as English. We trigger that translate single, and then that is going to spit out the translated value here. And then we just take the value from there and put it in the place we want.
Can you show them in the forms of viewer again, filling out the form, the Q roles commands that are showing when you do that? Maybe just create a new form and just add one item. Or actually, you've already got it there. Maybe, I don't know. Did you already have an example?
Yeah. Well, the trouble I have this very simple
that's your
example form. Which,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the trouble, I don't think we have I'm not sure how to show the commands. And actually what this form does, it doesn't translate them right away. It translates them when you click the submit button. So we wouldn't.
Well, this is a good opportunity to show the sample form anyway, because we're going to provide both as part of the package.
Okay. Yeah, so this form, and if you want to add the logic to your own form, it might be a better idea to use this as an example than the other, since doesn't have all the extra expense report stuff in it. But let's say I wanted to, and this is assuming a source language of English, but want to translate to French. It'll translate a single value there for me.
You can see the XML, the JSON, the JSON XML down below. That's cool. That's exactly what you were just talking about. It copies a value, does the transform to get into that secondary data source, does the XML JSON on it, calls Google to make a request, and then converts back from JSON to XML so you can actually display it.
Yep.
Pretty straightforward. What about other languages? Like, what about languages that aren't in the dropdown? Can they add other languages? I mean, this is only a pretty finite list. What if they wanted to, like, add Swahili?
Yeah, so basically all we have here is this expense report is using a form logic file with a list of the languages that we are including in the form. So these ones, but the Google Translate API supports many more languages. So we've got this link right here, actually, in this file that you can open up and see all the languages that it supports.
There's Swahili.
Yep, Swahili. There we go.
SW.
So as long as you're including these as an option in your form, you can use any one of them.
Is it easy to add that and just show them real quick?
Yeah, it should be. So let's see.
don't see Klingon. I was hoping for Klingon.
Yeah. Okay, so let's do Swahili, and I believe that was SW. And just double check that. Swahili, SW.
Scots, you got Scots Gaelic. That seems really enticing.
Okay, let's do that.
I didn't know there's a different Gaelic with Scotland and the mainland, UK.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's GD. Okay, so now I come over here to my designer, in the resource files, the file, and then just drag that in here. Add, close that. All right, so I'm going to save my form with that modified file. Refresh.
This is another way of using Forms Designer without the preview. You just save it and refresh it. That's amazing.
Yeah. Okay. So here we have Scots Gaelic. That looks very Gaelic, and Swahili. There we go.
Nice, very nice, nicely done. Okay, that's pretty much it, I think, for the demo. Let's move back and quickly summarize with our slide deck here. Thank you very much, Jimmy. That was amazing. So what Jimmy showed was how to add these files to your form. We're going to provide you with these two solutions, these two sample forms, the expense report and the sample form that you can use. And he showed how to use a drop down to select language and then change the labels in your form to a lookup value that looks up into a secondary data source to get the translate to value. And we're using the Google API to translate the from values to the to values, so the labels can be automatically translated into any language you desire. The screen tips give the users a nice backup to go back and reference the English. If they need to, they just hover over the text, not the label, but the text value for the field. And then once the values are entered, we can actually translate them back in English. Why would we want to do that? Once again, you can then surface or promote the data into your SharePoint library or your database, and you'll have a consistent language for reporting purposes. You can also, of course, keep the original language in there, which is also good just in case the translation doesn't work so well. And that's what we're doing there. So you just need these 5 files. You got some logic there. We're going to probably make an XML template part later. Maybe we'll add this feature automatically to Forms Designer in the future. But right now, you're going to have to manually go through it a little bit. If you need help, feel free to contact us. We'll give you a half an hour of free help if you respond within a week. And we can schedule something and walk you through this. And then, of course, there's a couple slides here. We showed the bonus about how to do the default values in InfoPath Designer. We talked about why that wasn't necessarily a good thing. You guys did the poll. Any questions for us? No questions? Come on, there's got to be at least one question or comment. Yay, nay? Good day. I want to thank Jimmy again for this wonderful demo and preparation. It's all you, Jimmy. And really happy that you guys can make it today. Once again, don't forget, Qdabra Forms, which you all have, I believe, is our product. It's our replacement for InfoPath, and we love the product because it's an easy way to not only migrate your InfoPath forms, but also to extend them with gazillions of new features, including what you saw today with Google Translate, because we can actually make those JSON requests now. You couldn't do that with InfoPath Designer, InfoPath. You could not make a JSON request, but today with FormsViewer and QRules, and you can make those requests. So I hope everyone has a wonderful day. It's been great to talk to you again, and we'll do it again in a week or two. We do have 2 updates of FormsViewer coming later this year. We're adding features for you to some cool new features. So keep your eyes on this channel. We'll be announcing them in a newsletter and giving webinars for them. We also have the training coming up in November. I hope you can make the training. We're going to have all the new topics that we've been webinaring since the last training, which was in May, will be featured, and we'll have more features, more support for new things in the designer as well. So once again, thanks for being here. We look forward to having you here again next week. Have a great day, everyone. Thanks, Jimmy.
Thank you, everyone.